The anime community has this bad habit of occasionally overhyping shows. Sometimes it will meet those expectations, and sometimes it won't meet those expectations. We saw this with Chainsaw Man, where that show had reached levels of hype that we had never seen before. It was even getting to people outside the anime community, and I saw those people getting crazy hyped for it. Now, I want to say we really enjoyed Chainsaw Man, but when the hype becomes too big, it is almost impossible to meet expectations. Now, Uzumaki had a good deal of hype, but it failed to meet expectations. Not only that, but it failed to give us a coherent show. So, what happened to Uzumaki? Uzumaki follows high school student Kirie Goshima, her boyfriend Shuichi Saito, and the residents of Kurozucho, a small Japanese town plagued by supernatural, spiral-related events. The spiral curse manifests in bizarre and terrifying ways, turning people into grotesque forms and causing chaos in the environment. Shuichi, who becomes aware of the curse's patterns after his parents' deaths, tries to warn others but is often ignored. After the curse intensifies, Kirie's hair transforms into a hypnotic spiral that drains her energy. Shuichi saves her, but the town continues to descend into madness. Typhoons and destruction force survivors into ancient row houses that form a growing labyrinth. When Kirie and Shuichi try to escape, they return to find years have passed, and the town has mutated into a spiral maze full of deformed residents. Journeying to the center of the labyrinth, they discover an ancient city with spiral patterns. Shuichi realizes the city is the curse's source, jealous for attention. As they accept their fate and embrace, their warm bodies intertwine, symbolizing submission to the curse. The town becomes a desolate place marked by a stone tower, suggesting that the spiral's curse is eternal and destined to repeat. Junji Ito is a very famous and respected author in the horror genre. He's received countless awards, some of which were for Uzumaki, and based on the reaction from the people who read it, they loved it. So the problem isn't the story of Uzumaki, so what is it? Okay, so these next couple sections are going to be a little convoluted because the story of how Uzumaki came to be as an anime is convoluted. Uzumaki was announced at Crunchyroll Expo in 2019, and it was to be produced by Production IG USA and Adult Swim's in-house production team, William Street. It was originally supposed to air in 2020, but was pushed back due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and it forced the team to pretty much restructure everything, again pushing it back to 2022. So at this point, we're already 2 years behind its original scheduled release date. In June of 2022, the show took an even larger hit when it was announced that it would go on an indefinite hiatus due to the request of the production staff. So 2023 rolls around and Ari Aster and Lars Knudson's production company Square Peg is brought in to help kind of bring some relief to the production staff. So we have 3 production companies at this point working on Uzumaki. At San Diego Comic-Con, it is said that the show will air in 2023. Well, that didn't happen. The show's first episode finally came out on September 29th, 2024, a whole 4 years after the show's intended release date. I personally find this timeline pretty crazy. Now, I've never produced an anime, but this kind of smells like there was a lot of shit going on behind the scenes, and new production companies are being added, so I can see how it would get extremely convoluted going from place to place, and just, it's really a whole mess behind the scenes right now at this point. But that's not the end. It was originally announced that the series would be animated by a producer from Studio Drive, who did some notable works like Konosuba Season 3 and To Your Eternity Season 2. However, when the show premiered, Drive was not included in any of the credits, so I think it's safe to assume they had not really anything to do with the work. Credits were instead given to a company by the name of Fugaku, where if you remember prior in the video, their name was not mentioned at all in the original production plan. And from this point on, every episode pretty much has someone new credited with animation. So to sum up the production of Uzumaki, it was a fucking train wreck. We had extremely long delays, multiple companies, directors, and producers all working on different things, and I'm willing to bet there was some corporate meddling going on in the background. It probably had to do with money, rushing things, so it comes out looking like shit. We have a decent idea of what went on behind the scenes, but I doubt we'll ever get full disclosure. The best we can do is speculate on why the production was such a mess. I just want to give my 2 cents on Uzumaki. Going into the show, I was extremely excited. Alex was excited. Everyone I know who watches anime was excited. Unfortunately, I'm the only one who finished the show. Regrettably so, because it was bad. Just to put it flat, it was bad. Before watching the show, I had heard of Uzumaki. I know people who have read the manga, so needless to say, I was very excited. I was hoping that this would be the show that would forge a new path for horror anime and take it up a notch so we could stop getting these half-assed horror shows. You know, I wanted something genuinely scary, and Uzumaki delivered on 1 episode. We recently made a video covering horror anime, and to put it lightly, they usually aren't great. So my expectations were high, and they were just destroyed. And that is really putting it lightly. Like most people, I thought the first episode was awesome. Having been done in all black and white, like the manga, gave it a very unsettling feeling. The animation was smooth, and to be honest, it was done in a way that accentuated the feeling of uneasiness. It did a great job at bringing that horror feeling to life. The art looked creepy and scary, and some scenes throughout the show, I would find myself kind of repulsed. So they did some things really well, great even. The capacity to create an atmosphere of unsettling horror can be done and translated to anime. If they could have just gotten all of their ducks in a row and gotten on a linear production path, I genuinely think they could have created a real, scary horror anime. Since this was being done by an American company, I really think that hurt them in terms of money and probably time restrictions. We had heard rumors that they wanted to pump all their money into marketing and animation for the first episode, and then drop it off because they had fears that the show would flop. Like we said, that's a rumor. We couldn't find any full sources for that, but we do see that at least being possible. After finishing episode 2, I didn't really notice the drop in animation, other than the backlash I had seen online. There was one scene that stuck out while they were running on the beach. I mean, that looked horrendous, but I didn't really pay that much attention to it. I'm not a huge stickler on animation quality. It was in episode 3 that we really started to notice the decline in animation. The movements felt so unnatural and not in a good way. It was like every time someone talked, they wanted to show movement, but over-accentuated it to a degree that made it feel try-hard. The mouth movements felt so off as well. On Kirie's dad especially, it was like if the person was not a main character, they just decided they weren't important enough to put the effort into it. The scene that upset me the most, however, was at the end of episode 3. Kirie is being attacked by a spike monster and it forces her outside during the typhoon. A pole impales it and it gets blown away. Then this person shows up and is hopping, but the noise they use as this person is hopping is some doinky sploinky ass sounding boing. Then he has this cheap scream and falls apart. I literally had to pause the show, film it, send it to my friends because that scene right there had literally killed any immersion that I had in the show. It decimated anything, any horror aspect. It was gone in that instant. It was after that episode that I was just so uninterested in the show that I really didn't even want to finish it. I mean, clicking episode 4 and watching it just felt like a huge waste of time. Episode 4 pretty much followed suit with episode 3. It felt lazy, boring, uninspiring, and they did the awful thing of putting a PNG and just dragging it across the screen to show animation. We're not just gonna shit on the show for the entire video, but they did do a couple things that we actually did like. For at least a short time, they had managed to create an atmosphere that was unsettling and really did the horror aspect well. Some of these things even carried on for the entire series. There were scenes in later episodes that we still thought were very disgusting and somewhat scary. Uzumaki had the potential to be the anime that the horror genre needed to give it a push in the right direction, to be the catalyst for change and bring about a new wave of horror anime that can bring out the real horror feeling that anime is lacking. Unfortunately, it suffered from possibly bureaucratic red tape, greediness, and indecisiveness. Uzumaki did some things really well, but I am sad to say that it will be yet another tombstone in the graveyard of failed horror anime.